It started as just another quiet afternoon at a small-town diner. But what happened next would turn the life of a waitress upside down and leave one of the wealthiest women in the country stunned to her core. Her name was Kiara, 28 years old, working double shifts at a roadside diner just outside the city. Most of the customers barely noticed her unless their coffee cup was empty. But on that day, someone noticed her for something completely different, something no one expected. Kiara didn't have much. Her paycheck barely stretched from one week to the next. Her shoes were worn at the edges. Her phone had a cracked screen, and her apartment was one bad storm away from a roof leak. But none of that mattered to her. What mattered was doing her job with dignity, showing up every day, and treating people like they mattered. Because she knew how it felt to be invisible. That afternoon, a young girl sat alone at table 5. About 8 or 9, maybe 10. She had soft curls tied in a pink ribbon, and her tiny hands were folded carefully on the table. But what stood out most wasn't her politeness. It was her eyes. Or more specifically, how they didn't focus on anything around her. The girl was blind. Kiara noticed the girl had been sitting there for almost 10 minutes. No food, no adult, no instructions. Just silence and an empty menu. Most waitresses might have hesitated. A kid alone? That's a red flag. But Kiara didn't ask a single question. She walked over, crouched down to the girl's level, and gently asked, "Sweetheart, are you hungry?" The girl nodded. Kiara offered her the children's menu, reading the options aloud and describing the dishes with simple, kind words. "The spaghetti has a little cheese on top. It's warm and soft, not spicy. And the chicken fingers come with fries, crispy but not too hot." The girl smiled when Kiara described the mac and cheese, so Kiara took it as a win. She placed the order, and when it arrived, she didn't just drop the plate off like she usually would. Instead, she sat down beside the girl and helped guide her hand to the fork. When she struggled, Kiara gently fed her, one spoonful at a time, patiently letting the girl eat at her own pace. No one asked her to do it. It wasn't her job, but it was who she was. What Kiara didn't know was that a woman sitting across the diner had been watching the entire time. From behind a newspaper and dark sunglasses, Olivia Kingsley had a perfect view. Billionaire, CEO of one of the largest tech investment firms in the country, and recently widowed, Olivia had come to the diner not for lunch, but for a rare few minutes of normalcy. No bodyguards, no meetings, no chauffeur, just quiet. She was halfway through her coffee when she noticed her daughter, Zoe, had wandered from the car and into the diner. Panic hit her for a second, but when she saw Zoe seated quietly and being attended to by Kiara with more care than any nanny she'd ever hired, something inside her shifted. She didn't intervene. Not yet. She just watched. Back at the table, Kiara continued feeding Zoe as if she were her own. She talked gently, asked about her day, and told her stories about silly things that had happened at the diner that week. Zoe giggled when Kiara told her about a grumpy man who had accidentally spilled hot sauce on his tie. 10 minutes turned into 20. Eventually, a black SUV pulled up outside, and Olivia stepped in. She didn't make a scene. She walked over slowly, her heels clicking lightly against the diner floor. Kiara looked up, startled at first, assuming this woman must be the girl's mother. "I'm so sorry," Kiara said quickly. She looked like she needed help. "I didn't mean to." But Olivia raised a hand gently, stopping her mid-sentence. "You did more than help," she said, her voice calm but deliberate. You showed my daughter more kindness in 30 minutes than most people do in a lifetime. Kiara blinked, confused. Zoe smiled up toward her mother. Mama, she helped me eat the mac and cheese, and she told me funny stories. Olivia turned back to Kiara. What's your name? Kiara, she replied, still unsure if she was about to be thanked or fired from life somehow. Olivia nodded once. Do you always do that? Help strangers like their family? Kiara shrugged. If I see someone who needs something and I can help, I do. Isn't that just being human? It was a simple answer, but it stuck with Olivia. By the time they left, Kiara thought that would be the end of it. A strange but sweet moment in a life filled with hard days and harder nights. She didn't expect to see them again, but Olivia Kingsley didn't forget people like Kiara. The very next morning, something unexpected happened. Kiara was just starting her shift, apron tied, coffee pots brewing, when her manager came out of the office looking pale as paper. Kiara, he said, blinking like he'd just seen a ghost. You have someone here to see you, she frowned. Me? He nodded toward the parking lot. You better come out. Standing outside was the same black SUV from the day before, and beside it, Olivia. This time not in sunglasses and denim, but a sharp navy blazer, pearl earrings, and the unmistakable air of someone who makes million-dollar decisions before breakfast. Kiara stepped out, hands trembling slightly. Did something happen? Is Zoe okay? Olivia smiled gently. Zoe's fine. Better than fine. She hasn't stopped talking about you. Kiara blinked. That's good, I guess. I don't usually do this, Olivia said, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw yesterday. You didn't know who Zoe was. You didn't know who I was. But you showed her care, dignity, patience. You reminded me of someone I used to be, before all this. She gestured vaguely toward her expensive clothes, her car, the distance between their worlds. Kiara didn't know what to say. I was just doing what felt right. I want to offer you something, Olivia said, but I don't want you to answer right away. Just listen. Kiara held her breath, and then Olivia Kingsley made her an offer that could change Kiara's life forever, not out of pity, but out of deep, genuine respect. Kiara stood frozen. An offer? Olivia nodded. I run a foundation. It funds community projects, education, mentorship. But what I don't have, and what I'm desperate to find, are people who actually care. Not for the PR, not for a paycheck. People who lead with heart. People like you. Kiara was stunned. She had never been approached like this in her life, especially not by someone in designer heels offering opportunity instead of judgment. I don't have a degree, she said quietly. I didn't even finish community college. I'm a waitress. Olivia gave a small smile. Titles and degrees don't teach you compassion. Life does. I'm not offering you a position because of your resume, Kiara. I'm offering it because of your character. Still, Kiara hesitated. She had bills, rent, and no safety net. Leaving her job, even for something better, was a gamble. One wrong move could throw her life into chaos. She didn't know if this was real or just a moment of charity that would disappear tomorrow. Olivia seemed to sense that. How about this? I'll put you on payroll for 3 months, full-time. Same hours you work now, but you'll work directly with the foundation team. If you decide it's not for you, no pressure. But if it is, there's room to grow. Fast. And what would I do? Kiara asked. You'd help us understand the people we're trying to serve. You'd visit local shelters, food banks, underfunded schools, sit with people, Listen, you'd help design programs that actually matter, because you know what matters. It wasn't just a job. It was a seat at a table Kiara had never even imagined she'd be near. Still dazed, Kiara whispered, "I don't even know how to thank you." "You already did," Olivia said, looking down at Zoe, who had just stepped out of the SUV. "By feeding my daughter without asking who she was. That kind of grace is rare." Zoe ran up to Kiara and hugged her around the waist. "I told Mommy you were my favorite person now." Kiara felt tears sting her eyes. She hadn't cried in years. She couldn't afford to. But now, with this little girl clinging to her and a billionaire offering her a chance not just to escape survival, but to matter, something cracked open inside her. The next week was like waking up in someone else's life. Kiara was given a company laptop, a phone, and a calendar packed with meetings. But Olivia made sure she wasn't thrown into the deep end. She paired her with a mentor, a warm, no-nonsense woman named Clara who'd come from a nonprofit background and understood what it meant to build bridges between worlds. Kiara's first task was simple. Visit 3 community centers in the city and listen. Just listen. Talk to single moms, underpaid teachers, foster teens. Ask them what they needed most, not what people thought they needed. At first, Kiara was nervous. Who was she to ask questions? But quickly, she realized something. People talked to her. They opened up. Maybe because she wasn't wearing a suit. Maybe because her shoes still had scuff marks. Maybe because she didn't pretend to know more than them. She heard stories that broke her heart, and stories that lit a fire inside her. A young mother named Letitia who worked night shifts and couldn't find safe daycare. A boy named Terrence who walked 2 miles to school every morning because his neighborhood bus route was cut. An elderly woman, Miss Ruth, who raised 4 grandchildren on a fixed income and couldn't afford her diabetes meds. Kiara took notes. She didn't promise solutions, just listened. When she came back to the foundation's office, she sat across from Olivia and handed her the pages. "These aren't stats," Kiara said. "They're people." Olivia nodded, flipping through. "Exactly what I needed." They built 3 pilot projects based on Kiara's notes: a pop-up daycare program for night shift workers, a local shuttle system for students in bus deserts, a community fund for seniors with chronic illness. But Kiara wasn't just providing ideas. She was out in the field, talking to families, refining the models, making them work. Within 6 weeks, local media started picking up the stories. But one story in particular made waves. A news article titled "Former Waitress Turns Advocate Launches Program Saving Families Thousands" went viral after a local journalist interviewed Kiara outside a church basement-turned-daycare center. Suddenly, people wanted to know who she was. But Kiara didn't let it change her. She still woke up early. She still checked in on her old co-workers at the diner on weekends. And she still visited Zoe whenever Olivia brought her to the office. Zoe had taken a special liking to Kiara. It wasn't just a passing fascination. It was connection. A bond. And Olivia noticed. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, Olivia invited Kiara to her home for dinner. A private thank you for all the progress the foundation had made. Kiara hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude." "You're not," Olivia said. "Zoe asked if you'd come. She even picked out a dress for you." Kiara chuckled. "Well, in that case." That night was unlike anything Kiara had ever experienced. The mansion was tasteful but warm. The dining table was filled with laughter. Zoe sat beside her, telling stories and holding her hand through dessert. After dinner, Olivia walked Kiara out to the garden. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice quieter now. Kiara looked up, heart thudding. When I saw you that day in the diner, I wasn't just grateful, Olivia said. I was reminded. Of what? My late husband. He used to say, real character shows up when no one's watching. He believed in building things that mattered. And when he died, I lost my compass. I started operating the foundation like a business. Efficient, measurable, but cold. You changed that. You made it human again. Kiara was speechless. And now, Olivia continued, I'd like to ask you something bigger. Kiara braced herself. I want you to take over one of the foundation's divisions. Run it completely. Staff, budget, strategy, you've earned it. It was more than a promotion. It was leadership. Kiara swallowed hard. I don't know if I'm ready. You're already doing the work, Olivia said. All I'm doing is giving you the title that matches. Kiara didn't say yes right away. She went home. She thought about it, long and hard. She knew what it meant. Longer hours, more pressure, decisions that would affect lives. But 3 days later, she walked back into Olivia's office, looked her straight in the eye and said, I'm in. What neither of them knew, what was waiting just around the corner, would test everything Kiara had built. Because not everyone was happy about a former waitress climbing the ladder. And someone was about to try and bring her down. Just a week into her new role as division head at the Kingsley Foundation, Kiara found herself navigating a new world, filled with strategy meetings, budget reports, and people who didn't always believe she belonged. At first, she brushed it off. A few cold shoulders, sideways glances, emails with an edge. She was used to being underestimated. It didn't scare her. But slowly, the whispers got louder. She used to serve fries and pour coffee. Now she's making funding decisions? Must be nice to skip the 10-year climb. Some masked their doubt with politeness. Others didn't bother. One man in particular, Graham, a senior advisor who'd been with the foundation for over a decade, made his skepticism clear from day one. He'd worked with Olivia's late husband for years and saw Kiara's rise as an insult to the system he'd played by. In meetings, he interrupted her. In emails, he CC'd unnecessary higher-ups to question her calls. Behind her back, he fueled the narrative that she was a PR pick, a feel-good story, not a serious leader. But Kiara didn't back down. She did her research, asked the right questions, made tough calls, and, most importantly, stayed focused on the communities she was helping. When people tried to test her, she responded with results. Still, the pressure grew. Late one night, Kiara was at the office catching up on paperwork when Clara, her mentor turned friend, walked in with 2 mugs of tea. You haven't been home yet? Clara asked. Kiara shook her head. I keep thinking if I prove myself hard enough, they'll stop looking at me like I'm a fluke. Clara sat down. They looked at me the same way when I joined. I wasn't from the corporate world either. But remember this. You're not here to impress them. You're here to outwork them. Kiara smiled, her shoulders loosening just a little. You sound like you've been through a war. I have, and you're winning yours. But Graham wasn't finished. A few days later, Kiara received a notification, an internal audit request. Someone had flagged one of her program budgets, a community youth initiative she'd just launched. She pored over the documents again and again. Everything was clean, every expense accounted for, every dollar tracked. Still, the implication was clear. Someone was trying to paint her as careless, or worse, dishonest. When she brought it up to Olivia, her voice was steady but her hands trembled. Olivia listened carefully, then leaned back in her chair. This isn't about paperwork, Kiara. It's about power. And when people don't know how to challenge your integrity, they challenge your credibility. Do you believe me? Kiara asked. Without question, Olivia said. But I won't interfere. If you want to lead, you have to fight this your way. And I know you can. It was the first time in her life Kiara had someone expect her to win. So she got to work. She met with the foundation's compliance officer, reviewed the flagged report line by line, and even asked for a third-party review. Her confidence was quiet but fierce. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting the programs she'd built and the people who depended on them. 2 weeks later, the audit results came in. No errors, no overspending, no misconduct. Graham's silent campaign crumbled, and while he kept his job, his influence faded. But Kiara didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. She went right back to work, this time with a sharper sense of who she was up against and what it took to stay grounded. And it was that quiet strength, that refusal to bend or break, that made Olivia pull her aside one morning with yet another surprising offer. I've decided to step back, Olivia said. Not from the foundation entirely, but from daily operations. Kiara blinked. Wait, what? I want someone who understands both the heart and the business to lead day to day. Someone who sees people, not just data. Someone who doesn't just react to problems, but solves them before they grow. Kiara's heart raced. I want you to be the executive director, Olivia said. It was the kind of role people spent their whole lives chasing. Ivy League grads, policy experts, high-profile consultants. And here she was, a girl who used to serve pancakes at 6 a.m., being handed the reins to a multi-million-dollar organization. But Olivia wasn't giving it to her as a favor. She was offering it because Kiara had already proven she could lead with both intelligence and empathy. There was silence. Then Kiara said quietly, Yes, I'll do it. 1 year later, the foundation was thriving. The programs Kiara built were being replicated in other cities. A mentorship initiative she launched helped dozens of young women from underserved communities land their first internships in tech and finance. One of her first daycare sites had expanded into a full-time licensed facility. And then, one day, while attending a conference on social innovation, Kiara took the stage to share her story. She didn't talk about numbers or titles. She talked about the day she fed a blind little girl macaroni and cheese because no one else did, and how that simple act, done with no expectation, changed everything. When she finished, the room was silent, not because they were unimpressed, but because they were moved. Then the applause started. After the event, a young woman approached her, nervous, shy. I don't want to bother you, the girl said, but I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For showing someone like me that it's possible, that you can come from nothing and still matter. Kiara smiled, just as she used to at the diner when a customer said thank you for a hot refill on a cold morning. She reached out and gently took the girl's hand. You always mattered, she said. You just needed someone to remind you. And in that moment, Kiara realized something. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It was a spark in someone else's, a seed in the next generation. All because she chose to be kind when no one was watching.